Dobrodošli. Gledate Jazeera Svijet. Ja sam Azra Hadžić, a ovo su priče koje smo izdvojili. Kakva je budućnost Palestine s novom, ekstremno desnom izraelskom vladom? Analizira Jazeerin Imran Khan. Zašto milioni pripadnika evangeličke crkve u SAD-u podržavaju Izrael i kako na to gledaju palestinski kršćani? Komercijalni brodski prijevoz vodeći je uzrok smrti kitova. Na koji način naučnici u Čileu pokušavaju spriječiti njihov sudar s brodovima? Benjamin Netanyahua se vratio na vlast vodeći najviše desno orijentiranu vladu u historiji Izraela. Jazeerin dopisnik Imran Khan, koji posljednjih 20 godina prati politiku na Bliskom Istoku, analizira šta to znači za Izraelce i budućnost Palestine.
I thought it was a brilliant move on behalf of Benjamin Netanyahua to get back to power by promising the far right a bigger say in the government. But I realized that if you're Palestinian now, there's no hope for you. I'm Imran Khan, senior correspondent for Al Jazeera. Between us, this far-right government, frankly, should be alarming the world. I've never seen a more openly hostile government in the 20 years I've been reporting from here. Let's take Itamar Ben-Gvir. He is the National Security Minister. He has been convicted of racism towards Palestinians, towards the Arabs. He's openly racist. He's now in charge of the police force. That was the first big concession that he got from Benjamin Netanyahu. He said, I'll back you, but you need to give me significant power. And the fact that we are now talking about him more than we are Netanyahu shows you where the balance of power has actually shifted. You're hearing two sets of voices, really. The first one is coming from, I would like to say, kind of liberal Israelis. They say, you know what, at least the mask is off now. At least we're an open right-wing society. At least we can deal with that. For the rest of the population that backs a lot of these settler movements, a lot of these far-right parties, their voice is very simple. They have always said that the land of Israel is theirs. Within the middle, you have people who are trying to just find a space for themselves within Israeli society. A lot of these people, you have to say, are just kind of more interested in the economics of Israel than any kind of peace with Palestine. No one's talking about a Palestinian state anymore. On the right wing of the Israeli parties, you're hearing people say the occupation is now permanent. And that's something that was always kind of dismissed when it was said out loud, but now people are taking that seriously. We're always trying to look for honesty, and constantly we're up against people who are barefaced liars. And now those lies seem to have disappeared, and people are just being completely honest and open with what they would like, which is, you know, the Palestinians out of Palestine completely. The next set of things that people are talking to me about are actually frightening. They're talking to me about a kind of a rollback of human rights within Israel itself. No negotiations with the Palestinians, increasingly tough measures against the Palestinians, including arrests, including cracking down on NGOs and humanitarian aid organizations. It's a very bleak picture that I'm painting, but it's reality. For the Palestinians, there's no partner that they can speak to. Relations between the Palestinians and the Israelis are at an all-time low. Palestinians, once again, feel like they have no one representing them. And the international community, they feel, continues to back Israel despite all of this inflammatory language this Israeli government is using. Yes, there is security cooperation. Yes, there are a number of agreements, but even those things are now fraught. And also, you've got the siege of Gaza. It's led by Israel. So far, everybody's kept a cool head. There has been no escalation, but that could change within the blink of an eye. I know, for example, that any microaggressions that turn into bigger aggressions against the Al-Aqsa Mosque compound or against the Gaza Strip or in the occupied West Bank are going to lead to violence. The only hope is the hope that we've seen since I've been covering Israel-Palestine the last 20 years, is the resilience of the Palestinians to get up every morning and still campaign, still dream of a Palestinian state, still deal with the occupation here, still deal with all the harassment that they get every single day. They deal with that, they get up. There's still people who are confident that one day things will change.
U prošloj emisiji imali smo priču iz Betlehema reporterke Al Jazeere Plus Deneta Kruri, koja je istraživala zašto palestinski kršćani već desetljećima nestaju iz svete zemlje. Ovaj put analizira zašto za milione evangeličkih kršćana u SAD-u podrška Izraelu predstavlja dio njihove vjere, kako mogu podržavati one koji progone pripadnike evangeličke crkve u Palestini, te kako na to gledaju palestinski kršćani.
Israel is God's chosen people, always have been God's chosen people, always will be God's chosen people.
In my last video, I walked through Bethlehem's walled-off streets and met Palestinian Christians fighting to stay on their land. But I kept thinking about how some of Israel's biggest supporters back home are not necessarily American Jews, but evangelical Christians.
Most Christians will tell you, well, we love Israel because God says, I will bless those who bless my people.
So why do American evangelicals support a state that directly hurts Palestinians, including their fellow Christians?
You have my sisters and brothers who are supposed to be my support, actually doing all their best to support the ones who are oppressing us. And it makes me angry.
Here's something that might surprise you. White evangelical Christians in the US are more than twice as likely as American Jews to believe that God gave Israel to the Jewish people. Now, not all evangelicals believe this, but the ones that do, their voices are often the loudest and most influential.
The title deed to the land of Israel is recorded in the Bible, which gives the Jewish people a clear and unclouded title to that land forever. It belongs to them, and it belongs to them only.
People that share this view are called Christian Zionists. They believe the Bible commands them to support and defend the modern-day state of Israel, regardless of what this means for the Palestinians who live under its occupation. They point to one biblical verse in particular, Genesis 12:3, that they believe references the modern state of Israel.
Genesis 12, here it is in the very beginning of the Bible. You know, I'll bless and I'll curse those who curse her.
I met Sharon Sanders in Jerusalem. She's an American Christian who moved here from Illinois in the 1980s out of a deep religious sense of mission to support Israel. She and her husband founded the charity Christian Friends of Israel, which aims to help people from recent Jewish immigrants to Israeli soldiers.
Just simply kindness of the heart to say thank you for protecting us, thank you for taking care of the land.
Her charity is one of several foreign Christian-led organizations that have flourished in Israel in recent years. It's estimated that every year evangelicals give around $200 million to Israel. Worldwide donations from the Jewish community far surpass that, but Christian contributions continue to rise and show no signs of slowing down. And some organizations specifically raise money for Israeli settlements in the occupied West Bank, which are illegal under international law.
We're talking about millions of dollars and political support that is used to continue my oppression.
That's Munzir Ishaq, a Palestinian Christian pastor who lives in Bethlehem, the city where Jesus is believed to have been born that's now surrounded by this massive wall. It's one of the most imposing parts of Israel's military occupation of Bethlehem and other Palestinian territories, an occupation that's now over 50 years old, meaning several generations of Palestinians have never known freedom.
When you support a specific state who has racist policies and is enforcing an apartheid state, that would be unbiblical in my mind, right? That wouldn't be loving thy neighbor as yourself.
You know, we read the same Bible, but then they are using the Bible as a weapon against me. You know, we Christians call the Bible Injil, the good news. So they've turned the good news into our nightmare.
Why is their read of the Bible so different?
Evangelicals read the Bible in a very literal and simple way. They believe that you have to bless Israel so that God blesses you. So it's like Israel becomes a gauge of whether you receive blessing from God. You know, makes me wonder what kind of God they are meeting in the Bible. The God I meet in the Bible is a God of love, is a God of peace. They see in it an image of God who's a tribal God who favors one nation over everyone else based on a promise that's thousands of years old.
But for Christian Zionists like Sharon, that promise is prophecy. Many believe that the establishment of Israel in 1948, which displaced the majority of the Palestinians who lived there, was all part of God's divine plan.
We see all over God's word that the Jewish people at a certain point in history would begin to find their way back home. And we know that happened in May 1948 when the state became a real nation. And ever since then, the Jewish people have been coming home. It's a miracle, and we've been living in Bible prophecy ever since.
Do you think Jesus, who preached love thy neighbor, would be okay seeing a wall dividing people like that and cutting off people from their land?
He probably would have quoted Genesis 12:3 and said, I'll bless those who bless my people.
When you're talking, I feel like there's a lot of support and elevation of the Jewish people having Israel. But doesn't that contradict the principles of equality that Christianity preaches?
Well, then I think we'd have to go back to God and ask him why he chose the Jewish people. He chose them to be a light to the nations, according to his word. He chose them to bring the Messiah through. I think the key is study what God says, not what man says.
To be clear, not all American Christians read the Bible like this. In fact, in the last few years, several prominent U.S. churches have come out in support of Palestinian rights, even endorsing the Palestinian boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement targeting Israel. But even so, the people who do believe in this prophecy have a huge following. And for them, it all culminates into a biblical grand finale called the end times.
Somebody said, I want to understand the end times, where you just need to look at three things. You look at Jesus, you look at the Jews, and you look at Jerusalem.
Many evangelicals believe that once Jews fully control the land, Jesus will return to earth and rapture Christians up to heaven.
To believers, it's going to be a time of ecstasy and joy and excitement and glory. But to those who do not know him, it's going to be a day of judgment.
If you're a Christian, you will not be around for the tribulation period. You'll be safely in heaven.
And this tribulation period, some believe, is a violent and bloody war for those who remain behind.
Jesus Christ will speak the word, and he will summon, in the most dramatic act of warfare in human history, he will bring about the slaughter of those who reject him.
And in some interpretations, they believe that 2/3 of the Jews will die. So these Christian Zionists, not all of them believe this specific theology, but many of them do. You're promoting them to come to a specific location in order for them, or 2/3 of them, to die.
It doesn't sound like a holy alliance.
It doesn't.
But this alliance is powerful.
Millions of Christians in America and around the world now stand with Israel.
Okay, pause. We're going to come back to Sharon, John, and Munvir in a bit. But first, let me tell you a bit more about this guy. Because to understand how influential Christian Zionists have become, you have to understand John Hagee. This Texas pastor is the founder and leader of Christians United for Israel, or CUFI, an organization that claims to have 10 million members. That makes Hagee influential outside the movement too, with lots of big-name friends in politics. Even though in several sermons, Hagee had claimed that Hitler was actually sent by God to force Jews to move to Israel.
Then God sent a hunter. A hunter is someone who comes with a gun and he forces you. Hitler was a hunter. Why did it happen? Because God says my top priority for the Jewish people is to get them to come back to the land of Israel.
Wild, right? If that sounds cynical to you, well, it actually underpins Hagee's beliefs when it comes to Israel. For example, this dedication to protecting and defending Israel includes denying the internationally acknowledged fact that the West Bank and East Jerusalem are occupied territories. As we saw earlier, Hagee and many of his counterparts insist the Holy Land is actually promised to Jews by God. And so they want to see the West Bank remain under Israel's control, because it's a necessary step for Jesus Christ's return to earth. But neither the Hitler comments nor his viewpoint on the apocalypse have made Hagee a political pariah. Even Israeli leaders applaud and court the support of Hagee's movement.
Now there are millions and millions of devout Christians who stand with Israel. So I want to thank you on behalf of all the people of Israel.
One group that is less welcome at the CUFI conference is journalists. We sent a producer and cameraman to meet some of the attendees at the 2022 conference, but before they could speak to anyone, they were kicked out by security. Still, I wanted to know, why do so many Christians support the ongoing oppression of Palestinians?
I attended a church service in Bethlehem, and I interviewed a pastor there who's really upset at American evangelical Christians for supporting Israel. What would you say to someone like him who's upset with you?
Well, I'm sorry for that, but I've also lived here, and I also have seen why sometimes the rules have to be strong.
Why?
to prevent terrorism, to prevent death. You know, if you have to build a wall, if you have to build a fence, if you have to do whatever it takes to keep those who want to harm you or hurt you, then you do that to save life.
Sharon's thoughts mirror the Israeli government's position, but in reality, the International Court of Justice has asked Israel to tear down that wall because it goes so deep into Palestinian territory, a land grab.
So I'll say that Christian Zionism in general is a very colonial way of reading the Bible and also a very white supremacist type of viewing of the Bible.
It becomes easier to oppress the bad ones because they deserve it, because they brought it upon themselves. We can build a wall and lock them on the other side because they are the ones who are enemies of democracy and freedom, whereas ironically all we're asking for is our freedom.
And for the Palestinian Christians who would say to you, we are actively being oppressed by the state of Israel, we're persecuted here, what do you say to them?
I would say, take a look at the scriptures and love them and be a blessing in any way you can, even if you're being persecuted. What did Jesus say? He said, turn the cheek.
Do you think they should love their oppressor?
I don't believe that Israel is oppressing them.
The injustices Palestinians are suffering under Israeli military rule are impossible to deny. I witnessed and experienced many of them firsthand while reporting this series in the West Bank. There's some hope things are changing back home. Recent polling suggests that young American evangelicals are more supportive of Palestinians than older generations. But so long as this powerful alliance between Christian Zionists and Israel endures, the hope of justice prevailing in the Holy Land remains elusive.
Filipini se bore s rekordno visokom inflacijom. Predsjednik Ferdinand Marcos Mlađi kaže da inflacija nije pod kontrolom iako su cijene nafte pale. Naš reporter proveo je dan s jednom porodicom u Manili i zabilježio kako se ona bori da sastavi kraj s krajem.
2 godine zatvaranja zbog pandemije, a sada visoke cijene. Poldi Baltazar kaže da je nekada mogao zaraditi dovoljno novca za porodicu. Prije pandemije svakodnevno je pravio ture kao vozač, ali je zbog restrikcija ograničen na 3 do 4 vožnje sedmično.
Kinikita ko talaga, umabot na lang 400, 350, sa pagkain pa lang todas ne.
Poldi je imao budžet manji od $6 na dan kada smo ga pratili na obližnju tržnicu. 1/4 novca je potrošio na rižu, drugu na piletinu, a ostatak na povrće, ribu te nekoliko banana i kobasica. Rekao nam je da je to hrana za 2 dana njegovoj 6-članoj porodici.
Developed nation prices in a developing economy. This is how many Filipinos describe the increasing cost of basic commodities. One of the most significant, a cooking staple, onions. At around $10 a kilogram, they're among some of the most expensive onions in the world.
Poldi nije mogao priuštiti luk, no čak i srednja klasa na Filipinima osjeća posljedice. Iako ekonomija raste, inflacija u decembru bila najviša u gotovo deceniju i po, mada su cijene nafte počele padati.
That does not mean prices are going to go down. That just means prices won't go up as fast as before. And that's going to be a problem if families are not going to be earning enough.
I dok se predsjednik Ferdinand Marcos Mlađi hvali ekonomskim oporavkom, priznaje da su cijene osnovnih potrepština visoke.
Our unemployment rate is quite reasonable considering the situation. However, on the other side of that coin, there is still inflation that is running rampant and out of control.
Poldi nema izbora, mora se boriti, ali teško mu je gledati djecu kako pate. Nada se da će rast ekonomije u bliskoj budućnosti osjetiti i obični Filipinci.
Naučnici u Čileu pokušavaju spriječiti sudare brodova i kitova koji postaju sve češći. Komercijalni brodski prijevoz vodeći je uzrok smrti ove vrste, ističu iz Međunarodne komisije za kitolov. Ali nova inicijativa mogla bi pomoći da se uvede red u morski saobraćaj. Lucia Newman javlja se iz Santiaga.
U čileanskom dijelu Tihog okeana mornarički čamac preuzima dragocjeni teret koji će ispustiti u blizini zaliva Corcovado. To nije obična bova, već ona opremljena najnovijom vještačkom inteligencijom. softverom koji može detektovati i identifikovati vrste kitova u ovim netaknutim vodama Patagonije.
Aquí sabemos que se encuentra la mayor concentración de ballenas azules que vienen a alimentarse durante todos los veranos y al estar aquí es tener la posibilidad de poder verlas.
No i oni su ranjivi, posebno kada je reč o pomorskom saobraćaju. Naučnici tvrde da su sudari s velikim brodovima glavni uzrok smrti ovih kitova. Novom tehnologijom nazvanom lido ili slušanje dubokog okeana može se odrediti lokacija kitova zvukovima koje proizvode. Potom se satelitski šalje poruka čileanskoj mornarici u realnom vremenu koja upozorava obližnje brodove.
And it sees exactly what the technology does. It alerts of the presence of the whale so the captain can temporarily change the course and avoid collisions.
Konvencionalnom radarskom i sonarnom tehnologijom na brodovima ne može se detektovati prisustvo kitova koji su u najvećoj opasnosti noću, dok se hrane. Michel André, kreator tehnologije Lido, kaže da buka koju proizvode brodovi može biti smrtonosna jer negativno djeluje na sluh i onemogućava komunikaciju između ovih morskih životinja.
And here we are with this sound that we hear from the engine outside the water. If we would have our ear underneath the water, this will be 1,000 times louder than we are hearing now.
Ljudsko uho ne može detektovati taj zvuk, ali on ozbiljno dezorijentiše kitove i delfine, dovodeći ih u opasnost. Ova bova dio je ambicioznog napora čileanske vlade i nevladinih organizacija poput fondacije Meri da pretvore Tihi okean u biološki koridor od Kanade do Južnog Čilea.
These whales come here and to grow, but they travel all over the Pacific Ocean. So this is the first buoy, but there will be others, and there will be in the ocean of other countries as well.
Bova košta više od $1 milion i mnogo će ih biti potrebno da bi se mogao vidjeti napredak. Na ovaj potez se ne gleda kao na kap u moru, nego kao na važan prvi korak.
Madagaskar je jedinstven po svom biodiverzitetu. Više od 80% njegove flore i faune čine endemske vrste. Međutim, mnoge od ovih vrsta ugrožene su zbog deforestacije, lova i ilegalne trgovine divljim životinjama. Nick Clark izvještava iz Morondave.
Ovako izgleda monokultura. U ovom slučaju riječ je o vrsti konoplje s nazivom sisal. Koristi se za pravljenje konopca. Ovaj prostor sušta je suprotnost bogatom biodiverzitetu po kojem je Madagaskar poznat. Rezervat Berenti nekada je bio šuma, a danas su tu polja sisala. Ovdje stječete dojam šta je izgubljeno kada su stabla posječena. Prstenorepi lemuri lutaju šumskim stazama, grickaju cvijeće u krošnjama. Zvijezda ove predstave teško je uhvatljiva. Verova sifaka kritično je ugrožena vrsta i kao i mnogim drugim vrstama lemura broj im opada. Pridružujem se vodiču Olivieru Gilbertu, koji se ovim stazama kreće već 30 godina. On mi pojašnjava kako intenzivna suša na jugu, uzrokovana klimatskim promjenama, dodatno pogoršava situaciju.
We've seen the number of the baby born. It's about only 30 or 40% of which is usual we have. So since 5 years, quite unusual happening in here is the number of the baby born.
Od suše do deforestacije pritisci na biodiverzitet Madagaskara su veliki. Na zapadnoj obali izdižu se spektakularna stabla baobaba. 7 od 8 svjetskih vrsta baobaba rastu samo na Madagaskaru.
It is just extraordinary, isn't it? This kind of sums up Madagascar's incredible biodiversity. And some of these trees are more than 500 years old. But of course, they're under threat.
Nekada su ova stabla rasla usred šume, ali te šume više nema i ugroženi divovi su sve što je ostalo.
Park exploitation for house construction, rope construction, and the transformation of the habitat into cultivation. And also they sell the fruits and the regeneration natural is not enough to replace population.
Of course, what's going on here is not unique to Madagascar in any way at all. It's happening simply everywhere. In fact, of the 8 million species on Earth, currently 1/3 are endangered because of human activities, driving extinction levels from between 1,000 to 10,000 times natural levels, including 25% of mammals, 14% of birds, 33% of reef corals and 40% of amphibians.
Neprestano nas oduševljava bogati biodiverzitet našeg svijeta, ali on je isto tako ključan za zdravlje naše planete. To je mozaik života koji moramo sačuvati.
Na kraju smo emisije. Budite s nama i za 7 dana. Doviđenja.